Situation surrounding kidnapping in Nigeria has taken a dramatic turn, and what you are about to hear is something that has left many Nigerians scratching their heads in confusion. The Nigerian Senate, led by Senate President Godswill Akpabio, has been pushing very hard to introduce the death penalty for anyone involved in kidnapping. But in a surprising twist, the federal government, through Attorney General Lateef Fagbemi, has come out strongly to oppose this move, warning that it could actually make Nigeria's security problems worse instead of better. Let me break this down for you so you can understand exactly what is happening and why this debate is so important for every Nigerian. In late November, specifically on November 26, the Senate made a very strong decision to classify kidnapping as an act of terrorism and prescribe the death penalty without any option for a fine. The next day, the bill was introduced for first reading, and by early December, it passed second reading with overwhelming support from the lawmakers. The bill, known as the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act Amendment Bill of 2025, was sponsored collectively by all the senators, showing just how seriously they take this issue. Senate leader Opeyemi Badele, who presented the bill, explained that kidnapping in Nigeria has transformed from isolated incident into something much more dangerous, describing it as coordinated, commercialized, and highly militarized acts of violence perpetrated by organized criminal groups. The senators were very passionate during the debate. Senator Adams Oshiomhole, who chairs the Committee on Interior, dismissed Nigeria's current programs to reform criminals as ineffective, saying that some of these criminals just go back to committing more crimes. He made a very strong statement that if someone is convicted of terrorism, the penalty should be death. Senator Orji Uzokalu talked about the suffering Nigerians have endured, mentioning how young girls are violated, women become widows, and families lose their breadwinners to these heartless kidnappers. The lawmakers wanted the penalty to apply not just to the kidnappers themselves, but also to informants, financiers, logistics suppliers, harborers, transporters, and anyone who knowingly helps kidnappers in any way. Now, this is where things get really interesting and where the controversy begins. On Thursday, December 19th, during a public hearing on this proposed amendment, Attorney General Lateef Fagbemi stood before the Senate committees and delivered a message that shocked many people. He said that the federal government opposes this death penalty proposal, and his reasons are quite detailed and thought-provoking. Let me explain his main arguments so you can understand why the government is taking this position. Fagbemi's first major concern is about international cooperation. He warned that many countries around the world would refuse to send back suspected terrorists and kidnappers to Nigeria if they know these suspects could face execution. Think about it this way. If a major kidnapping kingpin escapes to Europe or America, or any country that does not practice the death penalty, those countries' courts will block Nigeria's efforts to bring that person home because they consider execution a violation of human rights. So instead of catching the big criminals, Nigeria might end up only punishing the small ones who get caught locally, while the powerful ones stay safely overseas. The Attorney General also raised another point that many people do not think about when discussing the death penalty. He pointed out that there's a long-standing problem in Nigeria where state governors are very reluctant to sign execution warrants for moral, religious, or political reasons. This means that even when courts sentence criminals to death, they end up sitting in prison for years, sometimes decades, because no governor wants to sign the paper that would authorize their execution. Fagbemi described this as creating a situation of legal limbo that worsens prison congestion and creates environments where convicted terrorists can radicalize other inmates. Imagine a convicted terrorist spending 20 or 30 years in prison, turning that prison into a radicalization hub where they convince other prisoners to join their extremist causes. Another very powerful argument Fagbemi made concerned something called the martyrdom effect. He urged lawmakers to reconsider the death penalty provision, arguing that it could fuel extremist narratives and encourage martyrdom among convicted terrorists. What does this mean? Well, for some extremist groups, especially those motivated by religious or ideological beliefs, being executed by the government is seen as dying for their cause, which they view as honorable and even something to be celebrated. So instead of scaring away potential kidnappers and terrorists, the death penalty might actually inspire more people to join these groups because they see those who are executed as heroes and martyrs. The Attorney General also touched on something that should concern every Nigerian who believes in justice. He cautioned against the irreversibility of capital punishment, stressing the risk of judicial error. Once someone is executed, there's no going back, no way to correct the mistake if new evidence comes to light showing that the person was actually innocent. Nigeria's justice system is not perfect. There have been cases where people were wrongly convicted, where witnesses lied, where evidence was planted, or where investigations were poorly done. The death penalty leaves absolutely no room for correcting such terrible mistakes. Several other important organizations and stakeholders also spoke against this bill during the public hearing. The Nigerian Bar Association urged the Senate to adopt a more measured approach. They recommended that kidnapping should only be classified as terrorism when it involves organized criminal networks or terrorist groups. The NBA suggested that instead of making the death penalty mandatory for all kidnapping cases, judges should have some discretion to consider the specific circumstances of each case. They proposed alternatives like life imprisonment for less severe cases. The National Human Rights Commission also faulted the bill, warning that expanding capital punishment in a system with investigative gaps heightens the risk of irreversible miscarriages of justice. If you are finding this information helpful, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button because we bring you these important updates that affect your daily life as a Nigerian, and we want to keep you informed about what is happening in our country. The debate happening right now raises some very important questions that every Nigerian should think about. Is the death penalty truly a deterrent to crime? Countries around the world have very different approaches to this question. Some countries that abolished the death penalty many years ago have seen their crime rates go down, while some countries that still practice execution continue to struggle with high crime rates. The evidence from research suggests that criminals usually do not think about punishment when they are committing crimes, especially if they believe they will not get caught in the first place. So would the threat of death really stop desperate criminals or ideologically motivated terrorists who already accept the risk of dying in their operations? Think about the impact of kidnapping on ordinary Nigerians. Families have been destroyed because they had to sell everything they owned to pay ransom for their loved ones. Some families paid ransom and still never saw their relatives again. Children have been traumatized, education has been disrupted, businesses have closed because people are too afraid to travel or invest in certain areas, and farmers have abandoned their lands because they fear being kidnapped while working. The economic cost of kidnapping goes beyond just the ransom payment. It affects investor confidence, tourism, agriculture, and the general sense of security that people need to live normal, productive lives. The Senate committees assured all the stakeholders that their concerns would be carefully considered as the lawmakers continue to deliberate on this bill. The committees were given a mandate to conduct this public hearing and report back within 2 weeks, so Nigerians should expect more developments on this issue very soon. What makes this situation particularly interesting is that the bill was sponsored collectively by all the senators, irrespective of their party affiliation, showing that the concern about kidnapping cuts across party lines. Everyone agrees that something must be done about the terrible security situation. The disagreement is about the best way to solve the problem. As this debate continues, Nigerians are watching closely to see what their elected representatives will decide. Will the Senate listen to the concerns raised by the Attorney General and other stakeholders, or will they proceed with the death penalty provision, believing that the severity of the kidnapping crisis demands the most severe punishment possible? What do you think about this debate? Do you believe the death penalty would deter kidnappers and terrorists, or do you agree with the Attorney General that it might make things worse? Share your thoughts in the comment section below, and remember to like this video and subscribe to this channel so you do not miss any updates on this story.